Joe, because of the amount of talent coming off this team, which is actually not hugely significant, not to discount those guys because they're all very prominent players, especially Brown and Davidson. But in comparing the personnel losses to other top programs, it's fairly light, which speaks well to the prospects of 2020 if we get a season here where Auburn could possibly go. What's kind of your early feel for where Auburn places in the SEC West?
Well, and this is why we were talking about your guys, in this depth, like Noah Igbenogany, and we were talking about him leaving as a junior. And honestly, it's because of Auburn's depth at the wide receiver position, which is something that Auburn 2 or 3 years ago, talking about depth at the wide receiver position with Auburn was really not a thing. And Seth Williams is a wide receiver for Auburn that in all reality has the potential of being a first-round draft pick. He is that dynamic of a receiver that he could be. He is basically, and we can use this analogy because this is a guy that actually, again, left Auburn's program, made a couple stops along the way, and is now back in the NFL, and that's Duke Williams of the Buffalo Bills. And he is a wide receiver that it took him a little bit of time. Seth Williams is Duke Williams without the drama, and Duke Williams without the bad mistakes and the ego and that sort of thing. And he's an amazing wide receiver. The problem is you've got somebody on this Auburn football team that I don't even know at the wide receiver position. I do not know if he will go to the NFL. Now, he may, but I don't know if he's going to go to the NFL because he may be training for the Olympics, and that is Anthony Schwartz. He is the fastest man in college football. He is faster than Henry Ruggs. He is faster than every other player in the NFL or in college football. And honestly, I believe he will break the NFL Combine record next year because of his speed. He also runs track. And if he was, until everything took place with the coronavirus, he was training to try to make the Olympic team. And so there was a thought that if he made the Olympic team, that he may not play football anymore. And so now that the Olympics is backed up a year, that may now be the case going into the next football season as well, because he will once again be training to potentially make the Olympic track team. And there is no doubt about it. This is the fastest man in sports. And if you watch him, and you can watch him play, whether it's against Florida, whether it's against whoever, there was a reason why Auburn fans started getting so extremely frustrated with his lack of touches. And that is because he had the ability to cut the corner. And once he cut the corner, if he got around the edge, you were not catching him. And you can watch it on YouTube and you can watch those touches. Anthony Schwartz, if he goes to the NFL Combine next year, he will break the 40 record. He will break the 40 time because he is that fast. And so that's the reason why you start looking at this class coming up and you actually think, okay, this could be good. It's not a bad thing that somebody like Boobie Whitlow is no longer on this football team for the Auburn Tigers because of the depth that they now have from recruiting classes. DJ Williams is a much better running back than what Boobie was, and DJ Williams really didn't start getting these touches until the end of the year. We all saw what Sean Shivers did in the Iron Bowl. I mean, it's a gigantic poster now on some people's wall of what he did. So the running back position is fine. And honestly, that still doesn't account for the quarterback in Bo Nix, which Bo Nix is going to potentially be an NFL draft pick and be a very good NFL quarterback. So there's a lot of talent on this Auburn team going into 2020 that if this season does take place, there's a lot of reason for them to have hope in this. And you can even look on the defensive side of the football, and Owen Popo is one that we've talked about. He started as a true freshman, and you got to kind of see his ascension on this Auburn football team and how good of a player he was. KJ Britt is another one of the linebackers for Auburn that has a potential to be. Smoke Monday, he's a hothead, man. He is a hothead, but at the same time, he will lay a lick on you that you are not going to forget. So there are a lot of players on this team that can get drafted. Anders Carlson as well. If you want to talk about kickers, he's Daniel Carlson's brother from the Oakland Raiders. And he's another kicker that Auburn has brought in that could potentially be in the NFL. Auburn apparently is now kicker U because they have a ton of kickers that like to go to the NFL, and you're seeing them across the NFL right now.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking it down with Joe Hunk from the Fallout, 7:40 a.m., covering Auburn football there, Alabama, and all sorts of good things there. So please join him. It's always a good time, good discussion right here. So I'm sure you've been asked this question about, 87 times already. Put your medical hat on, whatever you need to do. I'm asked it all the time, but probably a fraction of the time you are, in regards to speculation about what's going to happen. When are we going to start playing football? All of that. And again, you don't know, I don't know, but what do you think are some of the key factors in regards to, well, what's your feel right now?
Well, if we would have had this conversation when we originally scheduled it, like yesterday, my answer might have actually been different, because yesterday we didn't know the topics that the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, had with the College Football Playoff Committee. But today we do. CBS 42 in Birmingham got a hold of the 4 possibilities that were really talked about during the conference call with Mike Pence, and none of those involve spring football. So that was my initial thought is would have been, we start this season in February and we have college football at the same time. And there could be a potential that if you are an Auburn fan, because, Auburn is very, very lucky. And I say this because, there's been periods of time where this university has not been very lucky when it comes to their sports being good all at the same time. Auburn basketball had its run. Auburn baseball has had a run. Auburn football has had a run, but they haven't all had this at the exact same time. And, a couple of days ago, we really thought that there was a potential that if Auburn had the 2:30 kickoff on CBS, that you would be going to your Auburn Tiger football game. And right after that, you would be leaving and going right across the parking lot to go watch the Auburn Tiger basketball game, and Bruce Pearl potentially playing in an SEC basketball game with arguably one of the best teams in the country. And then you could have been staying overnight and watching the baseball team, which is a top 15 baseball team. And so, there was that potential that we thought that could potentially be really happening here in the state of Alabama. But now, if you look at the scenarios that Mike Pence talked about, I honestly believe the scenario that we're going to truly see is going to be the October start one. And if you didn't know, there was 4 potential ideas that have been talked about. The first one, season starts on time. Nothing happens. We start on September 5th, and everything goes according to plan. The option 2 is the option of which you have a later start in October. And the October start time pushes you back about 5 weeks, and then you go 5 weeks into the month of January with your regular season. The option 3 was that you have this season, but it really kind of starts and you only play teams kind of in your region. So you wouldn't have your normal SEC schedule. You wouldn't have your normal CUSA or Sun Belt schedule. It's everybody's in driving distance. So Alabama would be playing Auburn and UAB and Troy and Georgia and Mississippi State and Ole Miss and all those. And that's kind of make up your season. And then option 4 is the season doesn't happen. So there was never this talk about starting the season in March or in the beginning of February. I think the October option is really going to be the one that you're going to see. Now, the question is going to be, and is you also have to deal with, if the football season is going into the month of February or into the month of January, now you're starting to get close to the NFL season wrapping up as well. And the Super Bowl would potentially happen around the same time as the national championship game. And how would ESPN coordinate that with the NFL? Because there'd be a ton of coordination going on with it. And based on the math that we did during the show, there was a real possibility that you could have the Super Bowl on one night, on a Sunday night, because we know that's when it always happens, and the national championship on a Monday. Or you could flip-flop it and the national championship be on a Saturday and the Super Bowl be on a Sunday, and we have all this amazing football at the exact same time. I really think the October start is what we're going to see. I really do. Now, this all depends on tomorrow. After we get this, you could post this in a few seconds, and we could find out that there is now a successful test at the University of Pittsburgh because they're testing for the coronavirus, and we have a vaccine, and all of this totally changes. So, I mean, it changes on a day-to-day basis, and we've heard the President of the United States use Alabama as an example about not wanting to have a half-full stadium because of social distancing, and he wants 100,000+ people there packed in like it normally is, and, you know, we've got to figure out how that's going to happen. But I think that the October kickoff is probably your best option.
Yeah, it would be fascinating if it wasn't for the people that are out there suffering. So obviously we're not magnifying the sports angle of it, but that's what we talk about here. And it will be, again, fascinating to see how this plays out. We're sitting here mid-April, and we've got a starting of fall camp that's typically right around August 1st. So we are just less than 4 months away from that. That's when the season obviously starts to get impacted, when the players can't prepare for day one.
Well, and you're an ESPN guy. I mean, we're getting close to SEC Media Days, and we're having to make the decision on that, and if and when that's going to take place, and if and when it shouldn't happen, because we don't even know when the college football season is going to happen. And I think that, you know, a major part of this that people don't want to understand, because, you know, here in the state of Alabama, it's like, wait a second, we're not Atlanta, we're not Miami, we're not New York City, we're not Dallas, we're not any of these major metropolises, even Nashville, that you know, we're not any of these. You know, we're kind of in a scenario that, in all reality, we're getting pretty close to, we could kind of start opening things back up, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But it's not about just the state of Alabama. It's about Georgia. It's about Tennessee. It's about your Floridas and your Texas and your Californias and your New Yorks and your Ohios and those. It's, you know, those are major states that have, you know, a very big issue that is still going on right now. And if we do potentially flatten the curve without a vaccine, well, what is it going to be when we put 80,000 people or 90,000 people or 100,000 people inside of a football stadium and one person has it? I mean, that's the reason why this is such a big issue, and that's the reason why you're looking at, you know, Ole Miss just talked about a few days ago how they are not allowing students back on until August 1. That's very close to the start of fall practice. So if Ole Miss is talking like this, and they've already made the decision of we're not allowing students back until August 1, that's an SEC school. So if you can't have students on campus, how are students going to practice? That's what this is about. It's about the students being on the campus. It's not about, are we going to be able to have these sports because, oh, Alabama's back open, or Arkansas is back open, or South Carolina's back open because they don't have the major cities like everybody else does. It's about the other states. And if you don't have enough that can do this, it's probably smart to push this football season back a little bit. And I know that we all want it. I mean, I know we do. And I know that probably it's not so weird for everybody right now, because normally we're in the middle of baseball season and, hey, there's a game on, but we're not really kind of paying attention to it. And this is when we catch up on our Netflix shows anyways. And this is when we take our vacations. And this is when, you know, we're doing stuff outside the house on a Saturday or a Sunday, because come August and September, boom, we're right back into football mode. It's not about now because this is what we're used to. But if September 5 comes and there's no football, that's going to be weird. And you're going to have a lot of people, especially in this state, that doesn't really know what to do. And that's why we have to be smart about this and prevent this and continue to prevent this. And I know that you're talking about people suffering. You know, my wife, where she works, she came in contact with COVID-19, and then she came home and I was in contact with it. And so we were quarantined for 14 days. Now, neither one of us ever showed any symptoms. Neither one of us ever got it. But it was a very serious lockdown where we couldn't even leave the house. And so, yes, it's a very big deal. You have to take this seriously. And it's definitely about getting the vaccines and making sure people are healthy. And I know that we want sports back. But right now, as much as we unify over sports, that's going to have to be a little bit. And we may even have to be pick and choose which sports do come back based on the exposure that the athletes could have to COVID-19 or to each other. We had somebody that talked to us today about, would NHL be the best sport that could come back right now, because they don't touch the pucks. The sticks touch the pucks. They have gloves on. They have face masks on. If they wouldn't even go to that route on it, where they're never touching each other. I mean, their uniforms may touch, but skin to skin contact isn't there. Is that the best sport that can come back? It may not be football. So this is the one we want because it's the one that we love the most.
First of all, Joe, I'm happy to hear that you and your wife came through that and everything's fine there. Everybody's healthy. The important part that you've hit on concerning the sports aspect of it is the connectivity of it all. It's not like, okay, the state of Alabama can make its own jurisdiction concerning its situation. We're in good shape. We're going to reopen. And we're talking about Joe Blow's Deli in Montgomery, Alabama, and they can open. And so
It's a delicious deli, by the way.
And you can't have an unfair playing field where the schools in Alabama can go start practicing on August 1st, but Rutgers in the middle of New York City practically, well, they're going to be shut down for a few more months, and other places in the country. That's the quadrant aspect of it is what makes it so incredibly complex, because everybody's connected and everybody needs to have competitors to play against, and different areas of the country are hit differently.
And don't get me wrong, we need this college football season, not just for fan standpoints, but there's athletic programs that need this. I mean, the other day, the article came out that you had the group of 5 commissioners come and send an email or a letter to Mark Emmert, and they're talking about how, look, we kind of just want you to the restrictions or the what you look for in a Division I program as far as how many sports you sponsor and all that. We kind of need some leniency on this, because let's be honest, I hate what I call, the crap games. I hate those. I hate those with a passion. I really, really do. I feel like it's a waste of a Saturday when Alabama or Auburn is playing your San Jose States, your Savannah States, your La Monroes. Like I feel like that's a waste. But at the same time, I understand the financial benefit that it has, because Alabama will pay $1 million or $1.5 million to these universities to have them come and play them on their campus, and that makes their athletic budget. If we don't have those football games, you are going to see a lot of athletic programs shutting down many sports, which we don't want. And that is where this problem is going to come into. And that's the reason why I never thought that fourth option of not having the football season was ever truly going to happen, because we as a society and the way that we have built the athletic departments throughout this country, Troy needs that game against Nebraska, or Troy needs that game against Missouri, or Troy needs that game against LSU or Tennessee or any of these. They need those games because their athletic budget needs those games. If they don't get that game, there may not be Troy softball. There may not be Troy baseball. There may not be, Troy any sports whatsoever, because of the fact they can't make budget. And so that's the reason why I know we're going to have this football season, and those crappy football games serve a purpose. And this year, unlike any other, they definitely need to happen, because these athletic programs are about to have to cut a ton of their athletics. And it's going to be very sad for a lot of different athletes that were going to school, and their scholarships may obviously be, renewed and all that, but you may not have a wrestling program for 2 or 3 years or something along those lines. That's why this season has to happen and will happen, because we have got to look out for those Georgia Southerns and Georgia States and all of those Austin Peays and those types of things. This season has to happen. We just don't know when, but it has to happen.
Yeah, if we're talking about the severity of all of this, just from an economic standpoint, and then just from a sports economic standpoint, football is king. Football, not to have a football season would be devastating on a zillion different levels for a number of people and in different parts of that whole dynamic of the schools, the employees in various levels doing different things, and the television revenue and all of it involved.
Yeah, and that is why this is so important. And that is the reason why you hear college football being talked about by the President of the United States. That's the reason why you are hearing about the Vice President calling a conference call with the College Football Playoff Committee and the NCAA, is because they understand the ramifications of this football season not take place. But as the universities are concerned, they understand they have got to have fans in the seats because that's part of how they make their money. It may only be 35, 45% of how they make their money, but 35 and 45% is a lot of money, and they need those fans there. And so they have got to figure out how this is going to take place. Your Alabamas, your USCs, your Texas, your Ohio States, those programs might be fine if you went an entire season with no football fans in the stands. They would be fine. But your Central Michigans, your Ohio's, those types, they wouldn't survive like that. Troy would not survive. UAB would not survive. That is why you've got to do this and have it where you can have all of these fans in the stands because of the fact that these fans help these athletic budgets. And that's why this has to happen, because if it doesn't, athletics in 2021 may be close to virtually non-existent if there is no 2020 football season.
It's an intriguing situation. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see the factors that are involved, the ones that we've already determined and know about, but a few may come to the surface that we didn't anticipate. That's what typically happens. So, Joe, you bring the perspective. I love it. And again, for as intriguing as it is, I will look forward to when we can just be hyper-focused on why Bo Nix threw that pick on 3rd and 6 in the red zone, and we can forget about the rest of this stuff.
You know what I'm going to be happy about? When I can go get a haircut, because that's the reason I'm wearing this thing.
Look at this.
Right now.
Yes.
Watch this. Okay. This right here. I mean, this is my hair, okay? I mean, this hair is all the way down right there. All right, so yeah.
Mine's mighty thick there too, Joe. My son's about to cut it here pretty soon. I'm about to even go that route.
I'm actually at my mother-in-law's house right now. That's why I have this beautiful backdrop back here. But she is, I'm not going to call her a professional hairdresser, but she has the ability to cut hair. And so my summer haircut is a mohawk. So here in just a few minutes, when I get done with you, and we'll get everything here packed up, and I may or may not have a good-looking mohawk here in about another hour or so. I don't know. I may still be in the beanie for like another month, but I'm at least going to try to get some sort of haircut in so that I don't have the hair down to my nose.
Based on the current situation, she sounds like a professional to me.
Right now, yes. It was either have her do it or her daughter does it, which is my wife. And my wife really wants to try, but I also don't want her to fail. So I'm going to try to go with the one that's not going to fail. So we will see.
All right, Joe. Good stuff. Again, it's great to know that you and your wife are safe and healthy and everything's good. And we will see better days in the future. We appreciate you stopping by. Great rundown on the NFL draft. You're always welcome here. You know that.
Thanks, man. I'm hoping your family and everybody is good. And I know you're about to have a busy week ahead, man. So good luck on that.